we've got a special episode for you today. We've just had the pleasure of interviewing none other than Mr. Mike Batt, LVO.
Lieutenant of the Royal Victorian Order.
Correct. So please enjoy our hour-long.
Yeah, it was an hour and it felt like half an hour.
Yeah.
It flew.
All of the questions that we thought we were going to ask went out of the window when we decided to talk about arranging books and hymns. But
what can you do?
It was an absolute pleasure. Mike is one of the nicest people.
Yes.
End of sentence.
Yes, he is one of the nicest people.
Yeah.
I mean, he was lovely. He was as interested in us as we were in him. He didn't monopolise anything. He was full of stories and entertainment. It was great.
Yep. So have a listen, enjoy, and we'll see you at the end.
And listen to his music.
Do that as well. Buy it, though. Don't stream it.
No. Do it properly.
Money.
Did you write that?
Yeah, he did.
I thought that was ABBA. Yeah, okay.
Mr. Mike Batt. Mike, how are you?
Hello, very nice to be with you. I'm very well, thanks, actually. Very well.
Good. Where are you calling us from today? Which part of the world?
Would you believe Wimbledon?
Good grief.
Ooh.
Underground? I won't do it. I won't do it.
It's near the underground. I am near the underground. About 5 minutes walk from the underground. But actually, I've never lived in Wimbledon in my life until about 2 years ago. And throughout my life, whenever Wimbledon came up, people would say to me, "Oh, Wimbledon, let's ask Mike about that. He'll know."
Yeah.
And of course, I just say, no. I just wrote the songs and
I just used the word.
Oh. It's weird how fate takes a hand, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't have opticians asking you about bright eyes all the time or anything. You know, it's just, I've just used the word. It's like... So I thought what we'd do today is thank you very much for coming on. You've been one of the names that's been in my life because Tim was my piano teacher.
Oh.
Big thumbs up.
A long time ago.
And I think it was probably you that introduced me to Mike Batt, or one of the songs probably.
Probably. I don't know which song it was, but I think one of the first singles I bought was Barbara Dixon with Caravans.
Oh, right, yeah.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah, there's a story to that. I mean, apart from the fact that it was from the film Caravans, which not many people know about the film.
No.
It was a big budget movie. It was like Lawrence of Arabia to look at. The three composers in the list, other than me, that were there before I came along, were John Barry, the shortlist, Michel Legrand, and Maurice Jarre, who actually did write the score.
Yeah.
To Lawrence of Arabia, and I was just, I'd done one film, and I had this album, Schizophonia, which had a lot of Arabic feel like stuff on it. They apparently had a copy of it. Having never heard of me, someone had a copy of it in the filming unit out there in the desert, and they were playing it while they were shooting. So when they got back, they tracked me down and said, what do you think? And I was still like number 4 on the list. And I said, well, how much would you pay normally for a composer? And they said how much. And it wasn't that much, but it wasn't millions like they are now. But it was whatever it was. And I said, just pay me 10% of that, and I'll go and hire an orchestra with it, and I'll just score one reel of the film for you. And tragically, I mean, they gave me the job. That was great. Tragically, the film didn't do well. It was a James Mitchell novel. It should have done very well, but they changed the story, lots of other things. But then the record came out. All of these stories have got, all of these songs with films attached have got so many stories. But the bad story about that was that the good news was, as you say, it came out and it got noticed. And well, you noticed it because it got radio play.
Yeah.
Radio loved it. They started bashing it to death. It started absolutely bouncing up the charts. I think it was at number 41, 43 or something. And then CBS Records, which are now Sony Records, I don't know whether they would have done it in association with the management, But they had January, February, which was Barbara's next single.
I remember that.
It was coming out.
Yeah.
And they were in a hurry. I think it was about January already. So they just pulled it. They went out of stock on purpose. And the record, which we thought was going to go to number one, it was moving so quickly. It just literally like a balloon, it just deflated. And that was the end of that record. But Barbara said it's, sorry?
They just stopped it.
They just killed the record so they could put January, February out. And to this day, Barbara says Caravans is her most requested song. And January, February really isn't really one of her favourites.
What a shame. Because
it's a pity.
Yeah.
It just shows what record companies, certainly major record companies, can do. You know, that you can't trust them an inch, actually.
They've just got so much power. They do what they... what they think is going to be the thing, but it's not necessarily right.
No. I remember a band, from the late 60s, early 70s called the Enid, and they were completely scuppered by their record company, apparently. Sort of held them onto the contract, but didn't like them recording anything.
Really?
Yeah. That's
weird. Yeah, they were a kind of very cool, round about the Middle Earth Club type of days. I remember seeing posters for the Enid.
That's the one. Some lovely stuff, but they made very few albums, which was a big shame. Yeah. But back to Caravans, the single, it was lovely. And like most of it, like all your singles, it's I can't quite put my finger on what you do to that first verse, because the first verse just seems to lead into the song. It takes you straight to the chorus, and it acts like some sort of introduction. Is that something that you aim at?
I think in that particular case, I was using the sort of rules I'd grown up with. They weren't rules anyone had taught me, but just by observing, you realise that if you've got two verses, in fact, in the film, we didn't have two verses because it was a shorter scene. So there's only the first verse and then two choruses in the particular scene that they wanted me to write it for. Can you hear a dog barking?
That's good. I thought I was going mad.
Yeah, I could close the window, but do we care?
Oh, it's all right.
I don't worry about it. Maybe I should bark a bit, and then you'll think it's me.
It may be. Just every so often, just give us a bark, and then we can sort of edit it in.
Anyway, so there was only one verse, which I wrote, and then when we wanted a single, I wrote the second verse. And often, the sort of rule of thumb is that the first verse sets up the reason. In this particular case, you're painting a picture of where you are. The early light is breaking. The morning sun is waiting in the sky. And I think I'm going to break away and follow where the birds of freedom fly, which explains exactly what the girls think.
It's like perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it just explains who she is and what she's thinking.
Exactly.
Because she's breaking away. And anyone who doesn't know the story, which is most people, because the film bombed. By the way, that dog is really annoying me. I'm going to close the window.
As long as we didn't hear like a gunshot.
It'd be funny if it was a talk show like, Graham or Parkinson or something, and you ran off to
Can I just go and shut the window?
Silence the dog. Anyway, so you you sort of learn as you go on with songwriting and stuff, that's what the first verse is there for. It's to explain what the song's all about. You're setting it up really, and then the chorus comes in, caravans, and we know what we're talking about. Oh, my soul is on the run, overland I'm flying, or whatever. Then when I then had to write a second verse for it, which was after the film was made, because they wanted a single and we wanted a single, so I then had to write a second verse. Usually I would write the second verse straight afterwards, so that I would still be in the same mood. I would know the timing would be that the album was going to get recorded, in 2 days' time or something, and I'd have to get the second verse written. But in this case, there were several months involved because we were off, finishing the mix, and the film came out or was about to, and they said, let's have a single. So I then had to write the second verse, and that's where I was able to avail myself of the sort of opportunity to write a bit more deeply what she was thinking, because you are, when you're writing for a film, you're acting as if you were the person who is in the scene. So I had to pretend to be an American girl who'd run off into the desert to marry an Iranian colonel. Well, I didn't sort of literally pretend to be a person who did those things, but you had to put your mind into their mindset. And so, but I also wanted it to be universal in terms of other people's experience. And so it became, I wish I had the wisdom to find some simple words to make you see that the things that mean a lot to you don't always seem to mean a lot to me. And that back explains why she's left him. She leaves her American boring husband, as she sees it, and goes off to seek adventure. And that sets up the second verse. So it was a good opportunity. It would have been weird to have only had one verse. But I do think that the verses are for explaining and the choruses are for, well, they sell the song.
Right.
And they sell the whole idea. It's not a question of commercially selling it, but it incidentally coincides with the fact that, of course, it's commercial, because that's what you're doing, is selling a song, but you sell the idea to people listening.
Right. Do you take that approach to all your songwriting, or have there been songs that you just had to bang out at a moment's notice?
I mean, even if you are banging them out at a moment's notice, I always do think that the chorus is the most important part. Yeah. It should also explain what is happening. I'm not keen on choruses that just say, let's say you think of a great line like, I've just fallen out of the window. Let's just say we're going to write a song called I've just fallen out of the window. If you just say that 4 times, that doesn't actually help very much. It's just, all it's doing is making it an earworm. Yeah. I've just fallen out of the window. Then you go, I've just fallen out of the window. I've just fallen out of the window. And
it's beginning to be my favourite song.
Yeah.
When's the album out?
I've had writers come to me, like artists who've written a song, and they might have written, well, it wouldn't have been I've just fallen out the window, but whatever it would be, they've just repeated it 4 times. And I'd say, look, at least put a secondary meaning in there, like an explanation. So I've just fallen out the window. I've just fallen out the window because I wanted to da 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 da.
Yeah.
So I've just fallen out the window.
Yeah.
It gives you a break. Just in the same idea as when you're writing an entire song, you want something to take you away from it, like a middle 8 or a guitar solo or something, and then you come back to the payoff chorus for the end. So yeah, there are techniques, there are rules, and I always, people say, do you write to a formula? Well, they've never said that really to me, but people do say it to each other, don't they? People don't like the word formula when it comes to songwriting, but there is a natural form. And form was used throughout classical music as being something to be admired. It's studied now. Sonata form is a particular form. You have your first exposition of the first song, the first tune, the second exposition of the second subject, then you have your development, then your recapitulation. Why shouldn't you have verse, chorus, middle 8, sometimes even a key change, would you believe, if you're Barry Manilow?
Yeah. Boys over.
And then, why not?
Yeah.
I think actually the funnest, I love the word fun when it's required, when it's not meaning a noun. Mm-hmm. The funnest type of middle 8 is, or other key change, is where you go up a key, but no one knows because you've gone down a key before that. Like, so you might pitch into the middle 8 and let's say you're in G, you might pitch into the middle 8 and without anyone realizing you're in F. Oh. And then suddenly when you go back to G at the end,
like it sounds like key change.
Yeah.
Escalating key change. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a few songs that modulate, like for their last chorus, their key change, they've modulated down. Is it Whitney Houston? Is I Want to Dance with Somebody? I think that last chorus is about
Really?
a tone or 2 tones down from wherever the first key is.
Does it go down?
But it just feels brighter.
It's just a fantastic song, isn't it? I love
Yeah.
that. Yes.
But there's a few
Well, I mean,
songs
of
like that.
course, it could be that it goes down. I mean, down is up, depending on which
Yeah, well,
octave you're in.
yes. They've just gone so far up that
It's come down.
gone the other way.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to like the beginning, because I'm really interested in how you got started, particularly piano playing wise. So I'm assuming that the piano is where you started.
Sort of, yeah, definitely. Sort of, definitely, yes. Because my dad got an old piano when I was as old as 9. I think I would have been 8 or 9. He got an old piano from a junk shop just because he wanted to have one. He liked to plonk about a bit himself. He only could play 2 or 3 songs, and all on the black keys, but they sounded great to me. He used to really thump like a pub piano player. I couldn't imagine how he learned to play in that style, but just only know 3 songs.
Because isn't Gilbert O'Sullivan only plays? I'm sure all the Gilbert O'Sullivan songs are all in sharp and flat keys, aren't they? I'm sure that's because he's a great piano player. He's got a great feel, but I'm sure all of his songs are sort of in F sharp and B flat and C sharp, and
I didn't know that.
which I consider like all the fiddly keys. Like it's sort of, it seems like, why would you want to write it in E flat? There's no.
No, I don't know where that mentality is. It's not in my head. You freak out the minute you see 6 sharps on a bit of music.
You just want to play one, miss one, play one, miss one.
Yeah. But my dad used to play in E flat and D flat and A flat, and he played 3 songs only. One of them was, I know this is getting boring now, but one of them was in 11 more months and 10 more days, they're going to turn me loose. 11 more days. I'll be out of the ballad.
Okay.
That one, and a bit of some bastardized Chopin. Da, 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 in the still of the night.
Okay.
Da, 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 da. He used to play that and something else, but it was all rump, bump, 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 and it really made me think, wow, that's great. Yeah. So I started to pick out tunes on the white keys, because that was more natural to me. And then I realized left hand, well, that's going to be another, I'm going to have to teach myself the left hand. And then a kid at school, a Polish kid, had an accordion, and he taught me to play the accordion. And the left hand of the accordion, of course, is buttons, and each button represents a chord. So you only have to play one button to get the whole of the chord of C major. And then next to it is G, which of course is the dominant. And the other side of the C, you've got your subdominant, which is F. So if you've got C, G, and F, as we all know as musicians, that you've got your apart from which you probably might want an A minor occasionally. In the key of C, if you've got those 4 chords, you're home and dry. You're pretty much. Yeah.
There's rock and roll sorted.
Yeah, exactly. And it started that way. And so I got myself an accordion, and it was a question of begging my dad, because we had 4 kids. We didn't have that much money. Well, I say we didn't have that much money. We weren't a moneyed family. He was a civil engineer. Mm-hmm. He earned a wage, but it wasn't. We weren't poor, and yet my mum and dad were always arguing about money. And because we had 4 kids, so I'm not pleading poverty, but it was like, which one are you going to buy shoes for this month, and which one for next? It was literally rotation. Mm. But they were very good parents, and I managed to get an accordion, a second-hand lovely accordion, 48 bass, and I learned my chords from that with my friend Kaz Novakovsky, and that was my sort of first instrument I could show off on, put it that way. Mm. Okay. But the piano, I then realised if I could learn how to play a left-hand triad of C, which was fairly easy, play one, miss one, play one, miss one. That's what I teach kids these days. My granddaughters, so they come to the house and say, I'll be able to teach you to play rock and roll in 5 minutes. And they go, really, Grandpa? You take them to the keyboard, you show them C major triad, or whatever it might be, F major and G major, and then they suddenly can play rock and roll. Yeah. And that's how I learned to taught myself to play the piano. And of course, then when my mum and dad said, "Oh, we should send you to piano lessons," I wasn't interested because I was already playing all the songs that my mates wanted to hear, showing off. I reckoned that the reason that music was invented to impress women, at least for my.
I'm obviously doing it wrong.
I was going to say, I'm blowing down the wrong end of the piano here.
Well, in my case, it was because I was not a footballer. I always used to pray to be picked to go in goal and hope it didn't come down my end. Yeah. If you want to use the expression, I hope the ball never came down my end. So I could lean against the goalpost. But anyway, so I was not a sportsman. I rode a lot of bicycle, one bicycle a lot, and I did a lot of running, but I wasn't a skilled sportsman. So music was the thing that I sort of got into. It's funny that if you're good at one thing, you sometimes don't get good at something else you might have been good at.
Yeah,
because I don't think I ever consciously thought, "Oh, I'm lousy at sports, so I'm definitely going to do music." It just happened.
Yeah, you just gradually go into it, don't you? Without not without a plan, but it's just the way you go.
Yeah, exactly.
I think mine was just that I just couldn't do anything else.
Well, there's so many musicians who say that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And I've got a friend who's got horses, and his daughter's got into horses. And he says it's great because it means that they're not running around, getting drunk in pubs and coming out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. They're so busy with the horses. Well, I mean, that's a bit of a sort of parental way of looking at it, but it's still the same thing. She's busy having a great time riding horses and doing gymkhana, and she's not she's not loose on the streets getting into trouble.
No, you're right.
So it's the same with me and music, really.
Yeah. So how far did your musical education go in that you were taught by other people, or were you just self-taught?
Self-taught, totally.
Completely?
Yeah. My mum and dad didn't play. I told you my dad played 3 songs, but he didn't play really regularly. He just bought the piano more to do it up than anything else. He was good at woodwork and that sort of thing. He liked buying things in junk shops. We had an old gramophone with some George Formby records. Oh, yeah. That was about it, really. Saturday morning, listening to Pop Club or whatever it was on radio on the light program. But we never went to concerts. None of the neighbours were interested in music. I had no friends that were interested in music. I had friends, but not the ones that were interested in music. So for some reason, I know one of the reasons, we lived in Bradford for a while because my dad was a civil engineer. We travelled around a lot. Every time there was a job available, it might be in another end of the country. Yeah. He would apply for it, and it might be a bit further up the scale for his promotion. Mm-hmm. So we went from Southampton to Eastbourne, and from Eastbourne to York, from York to Bradford. And it was in Bradford that I learned my music. Oh. But yeah, I was totally self-taught. And when one thing that did happen that was momentous was before the days of junk mail that we know it today, which of course is all online, there was junk mail that came through the letterbox. And that was trying to get you to buy bulbs for the garden or whatever it might be. And Concert Hall Record Club put a leaflet through the door saying that I could have 4 free EPs, because there was only vinyl in those days, 4 free EPs if I signed up to the Concert Hall Record Club. And it did say that I had to buy 1 album a year at the full price of 26 shillings, which is about £1 and a third, isn't it? Which these days might be five quid or something. But I had, that was way out of my budget. But I did have to somehow cough up or save up for one album a year. And in fact, I bought more than 1 album a year. I don't know what I did. I got a job in a pub playing the piano. That's right. And the first album I got was Schubert's Ninth Symphony. And I fell in love with it. I just played it over and over again. And so I was into classical music when I was about 11 or 12. And while I was doing that, along came the Beatles and the Stones, which I was equally into. And so I ended up being interested in all the classical composers and pretty much everything that came along in pop music.
You had the best of both worlds in that case. So when did you start writing your own songs? When did you think, okay, I'm not going to bother playing stuff that exists, I'm going to write my own?
I didn't consciously think, right, I'm going to sit down and write my own. But I do remember I set... I've always been fascinated by lyrics, and A.A. Milne was a big favourite at home when we were very small. And I loved the way he used words, the rhythm of it, the rhymes, the imagination, everything that went into it. And that inspired me. And other good things like Lewis Carroll, again, fabulous, use of words, just was magic to me.
Yeah.
The way people could use, some people could use words and some people didn't. That was fascinating as a sort of study, but it was unconscious. I just loved it. So that was the lyric writer in me that was being fed with ideas. And then the music, when did I actually write a tune? The first thing I actually wrote a tune to was actually setting a poem by A.A. Milne, James, Morrison, Weatherby, George, Dupree.
Wow.
Took great care of his mother, though he was only 3.
Yep.
And I can remember the tune I put it to now, even now, and I'm not going to sing it, but please don't ask. But there was that, and then there was, I wrote a poem that got into the school magazine when I was about 9, called "A Man from Armada was searching his larder."
That's better than mine now.
Yeah, I mean, wherever Armada is, I mean, I'd heard of the Armada, so I presumed there was a place called Armada, but I don't think there is.
Wow.
So you mentioned something then that I thought was really interesting, that you sort of you honed your craft playing in pubs, and I know for me that's probably the same sort of thing. Like the big one that I sort of sticks in my memory is having to accompany like a drunk man singing "The Wonder of You" somewhere between G and F sharp in 38. When it's
yeah.
Well, you and I've got the same experience then. That's what I had. I started playing in pubs when I was 14. It was the only way to stay in the pub without getting kicked out, was to be the piano player.
Yeah.
And they used to line the top of the piano. Everyone would buy you a pint, and it would be sitting there. I don't know how many pints that you could line up along the top of a piano, probably about 10. But I managed to polish them all off. So I must have been pretty pissed by the end of the evening.
The longest versions of Way Down Upon the Swanee River that's ever.
Yeah, and also I remember a guy, and I remember his name. His name is Morris, and he'd come into the pub. It was in Winchester, and he'd come into the pub, and you're right, he'd be completely pissed, and he'd be leaning all over you, going, "I'd like to take you on a slow boat
to China."
And that you're going, China, is it China or China? And you think, and you're just trying to work out the chords, and that's the best way to learn, isn't it?
It is,
as
isn't
you
it?
said.
Yeah, it forces you to think on your feet.
It's terrifying as well, because when you can, especially when you can feel that they're going somewhere that you can, you're in A, so let's play E7, or let's move to B, just to go with him, go with him.
Exactly. The good news is, I was trying, and it happened recently. Because with COVID, I've hardly been out at all, but we happened to be at somebody's drama school play thing that they'd done, and we went back to their house, and I was at the piano, and they were asking me, "Oh, yeah, play us a song," sort of thing, and somebody was singing, somebody well known actually, but it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to give it anyway. And they went, "Come on, I'll sing such and such," what it was. And so they got up, and they thought I was following them, and in fact they were following me. And of course, as you know, as keyboard players, that doesn't work if you don't know the song, because they've got to pitch for the note. They've got to be brave enough to be slightly ahead of you. And then you can follow them. You hum it and I'll play it thing works in those situations. But if the singer, the best situation of all, I know that I don't think I've ever done an interview where I've tried to explain the skills of being a piano player, but if you've got a good crowd in and they all know the song, you can go as wrong as you like, and they'll still carry on because they've stopped listening to you. And as long as you're not right up high in octaves, leading them on purpose to bite through, you can follow them from low down and softly until you find your feet again, in which case you can get back on them again and get up, and they think you've played it all the way through.
The amount of times that we've had to play sort of individually and as a band for rugby club North Wales sort of end of season dues, where they all decide that we're all going to sing Delilah and we're going to sing it now. And it's sort of, well, which key do you want to sing Delilah in? F sharp, some of them are in G, some of them are in A flat. It's sort of, we'll go for it.
It's for shouting.
Yeah.
Well, you start it in a key, and then the girls all go, "Can we have a bit higher?" And then the guys go, "No, can we have a bit lower?"
Yeah.
And eventually you end up somewhere. I think the best thing is just to start it in one key, and they've just got to lump it if they can.
I think that's the only way to do it.
Just get on with it.
Stick to your guns, play it, let them shout whatever they want to along with it, and everybody will have had a nice evening.
Everybody's happy.
Have you noticed how in church, if you go to someone's wedding, or I'm not a regular churchgoer, I'm not a churchy or churcher, but having grown up at school, going to church, and as one does in life generally, occasionally go to things. All of the hymns are in the wrong key for the guys and the girls.
Yes,
they're right in the middle. They're sort of averaged out, so that it can sort of nearly be right for everyone. So if you're a bloke with a tenor kind of voice, you're always jumping octaves to try and fit the notes.
Yeah, for me, I'm either way too low or way too high for the things, and I've got experience of singing in choirs as well, and I can never pitch it right. I can never pitch it right in church. It's very strange, and I always think it's me, maybe not hearing it properly. But I'm either falsetto or I'm low double bass. I just cannot get the right key.
I think maybe that they use girls' keys, and we've got to just fit in, because I completely agree with you. You're always jumping octaves. You'll sing the first line in one high, and then you've suddenly got to go down octave basso for the next line.
I'm glad you said that, because I thought it was just me. I thought maybe there's something wrong with my hearing, and I can't figure out where I am. But no, that's all right. That's fine.
They're in one of those that sort of sweet spot where you can't even transpose it. There's no way to make it comfortable for anybody, because it just becomes more extreme wherever you move it. That place is the only place it's going to live. And it's uncomfortable for everybody. Because it's funny you mentioned that, because this is a shameless plug for anybody that's watching. We're in the process of writing an album at the moment, because we got fed up of having to sort of, well, not fed up of playing other people's songs. We thought, let's just give it a go and we'll just do it. So our inspiration was Mike Batt, A Songwriter's Tale.
It was, actually.
And then, and what was the second one was Randy Newman, The Anthology. And
I'm in good company then.
And the third one is the Big Red Book of Welsh Hymns. That was...
You can't go wrong with hymns. They're so well written.
Well, that's the thing we were saying about hymn writing, is that they're just so... The voice leading is absolutely perfect. It goes exactly where you think it's going to go. Yeah. And it's sort of, and they're written in that way that by the time you've done the second verse or the third verse, like there's no sort of, there doesn't tend to be that many choruses in hymns, but they're written so well and the voice leading so perfect that by the time you get to the end verse, everybody knows exactly where they're going.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's just so well done.
Yeah.
And I know we were just talking negatively about hymns in the terms of the fact they've got to average out between female and male voices in key terms. Yes, you're right. And if I noticed early on that my the way I would write a tune is quite similar in style sometimes to what Elton would do. In other words, you pick the way he changes his chords was very similar to the way I sometimes choose to. So, you know, you get those where you're playing in, let's say, use an easy key like G, and then you suddenly go to a B and then an E, A, and D, and back into the G. In other words, that is very hymnal.
Yeah.
And I think that's because both he and I, and of course many other songwriters, including yourselves by the sound of it, were brought up, certainly I was, in a sort of Church of England kind of atmosphere at school, or Catholics, some people, I don't know, wherever it was, but the hymns have got this chord structure where they do go they go what I would call back into the chord, what do you call it, the circle of chords. They go back a few steps and then come around back in again to the dominant, and then off you go again.
It's like the cycle of fifths. It's a circle of fifths, but they've pie charted it off, and they'll go so far, and then they'll put that one in, and they go, haha, but we're going to go back here to get this. It's all over the place.
What's that one? Da, 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 to those in peril
on the sea.
That's it.
Oh, that's lovely.
But the bit at the beginning, the chord structure, what is it? I've got my piano on. It says, please wait. Yamaha.
Yamaha.
Wait.
Dot, 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 dot. Yeah, isn't that still stand up.
And that's a good basis for, I don't know, songwriting, because it is interesting musically, but it doesn't take you into outlandish, unnatural areas.
No, which you shouldn't. Have you gone quiet, Mike, or is it just me?
It's just, I think the piano's thrown it and I've moved the button. It's all right.
Okay,
it's all fine.
Yeah.
It's all fine.
Yeah.
Is it too loud?
It's all right.
It
was beautiful. It was beautiful. Don't worry.
So, what do you think about modern songs? I mean, going back to, say, the Gershwins or the Berlins, who made good use of the circle of fifths or circle of fourths, that just seems to be lost now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've got to say, I was watching the Brits last night, and a lot of it's because of rap. I'm not blaming it, but a lot of rappers would rap in just one chord.
One chord all the way through.
It's just a feel, isn't it? Yeah. I think they just sort of it's that
they get the beats.
Yeah. It's just a feel
thing.
Get the
beats. They've got a chord going. You don't need more than an E, the bass playing a really good groove.
Yeah.
A great little drum lick going through it, and then they just rap. They don't expect it to throw them like hell if it had to change. They're not even singing really. And then in comes the hooky chorus, where if they've taken a hooky chorus to make it interesting, and then back to the verses, which are all rapped. And I found that was happening all the time. Last night I was watching, say, the Brits, and I was just thinking, really? I mean, is this where it's all going? Hopefully, like music, as music always does, it changes and grows, and hopefully it'll grow somewhere more interesting.
Yeah, I hope so. For me, music seems like it's been going backwards for the past almost 100 years now. I mean, it got to a peak, and when it got very experimental around about 1900, and then it just seems to be getting less and less and less as time goes on, which is a shame.
Yeah, I agree. Same thing's happening in classical music.
Exactly. Yes.
It's funny how all the arts, fashion. I think fashion's quite interesting at the moment, but it's not as interesting as it was in the 70s and 80s.
No.
It's funny how music, and not only the speed, not only the style, but the speed at which it changes these days is much quicker. Because in the old days, they had any communications. I mean, if we couldn't talk like this, if you lived where you do and I live where I am, I'd have to be a travelling troubadour, or you would, and come to me and tell stories.
Yeah.
And it takes ages for, somebody beats somebody else in some far off country, which affects your sovereignty. You don't find out till 9 months later when
he's already
when
dead.
they land suddenly speaking French,
Yeah. Wait,
but the rotations of fashion, which might have taken 50 years or 100 years in the year 1600, 1700, 1800. That moved so slowly because of newspapers and there were no outlets. I know I'm rambling way off probably what you wanted to talk about.
No.
But fashion changes so fast these days because newspapers want it to change. Even me using the word newspaper states me because it's social media and everything. Yeah. They want it to change. If it doesn't change, it's not interesting. So let's change it. Let's move it. Let's change it. Let's be quick.
Yeah.
There's a sort of what's the word? Hurried panic. I've got to get something out quick. So therefore, it's got to be short, small, and
which is a shame. It really is. I mean, some things can develop over time and not change completely. That's the way I think they should go. You were saying about classical music. When you started writing, did you just hear the melody, or did you hear the layers of arrangement in the background as well?
Well, classical. If ever I write a so-called classical piece,
not just classical. Let's say the first few songs that you wrote that were recorded. Did you hear strings in the background? Did you have the whole arrangement of the pop song up in your head already?
To be honest, probably no.
Right.
I would think the first ones I wrote weren't that great. In fact, they keep popping up and haunting me. eBay. I see somebody's bought. I look on Twitter. Somebody says, "Oh look, this is an early Mike Batt demo."
Panic.
And I listen to it. And there's a song called Wayside, and the person playing it doesn't want to play the whole thing because he wants to sell all it is an acetate from my first publishing company. I didn't own the company, I was the writer. And they'd make an acetate which was cut on a lathe, like a little record. And they'd send those to the producers. And it was one of those, and it's just me on a piano singing this song called Wayside. It's not a bad little song, actually. But I wish I had the demo because then I'd be able to hear the second verse because they fade it out on YouTube, and you can't, obviously, so you can't copy it. Right. And they've sold it on, and I've even tried to trace it and track it down. And apparently, someone on Twitter did anyway on my behalf. And the guy said, "Oh no, I don't know who I sold it to." And so again, slightly off tangent there, but off at a tangent. But so the early songs I would play on the piano, I'd sing them. Sometimes I'd have an idea about what sort of orchestration I might like to do with them if ever I got the chance. Right. But it was soon after I started. It was after my first single session, on which we did 3 songs in 3 hours, which is the usual allocation of number of songs per session. Somebody else was orchestrating. It was Richard Hewson, who's brilliant. He did Those Were the Days, Mary Hopkin, and he also did The Long and Winding Road for Phil Spector, as hated by Paul McCartney until I think he's got used to it now. But still a very good arranger. And I thought I learned a lot from him, watching him work. And so on my second record, even though first hadn't been a hit, I said to it was my boss by then, because I was head of A&R for the record company. Up by some foolishness of theirs, they appointed me as that when I was 19. And I said to him, I'd like to arrange my own now. And he said, fine, if you think you can, go for it. And from there on, I was writing my own strings and brass and horns and whatever.
Really, from 19?
Yeah. And I was arranging when I was 18, but I was doing it for other people, like Family, an album called Music in the Doll's House, which is, if you haven't heard it, you ought to check it out on Spotify.
Is that the same family that John Wetton used to be? Yeah.
Family were the band that was coming up in 1968 that the Beatles, even the Beatles, thought were going to be the next Beatles. It was unbelievable, and they happened to be on the record that I was signed to, the record label, Liberty Records. And although eventually they jumped ship and went to Reprise when they went to America to cut their record. To actually cut the lacquer, they thought they had to travel to New York, which is ridiculous, just to cut that lacquer deeper. It's crazy. But anyway, when they were there, they were stolen by another record company. But when they were making the record, the manager, John Gilbert, said to me, "Oh, so you write down the top lines," which is what I used to do to make a bit more of a living. I used to write the top lines of people's songs. So Jeff Lynne, for example, was signed to the same company with his band, The Idle Race, before, and he'd come in and he'd have some songs that were all on tape, and he'd ask me to write them down. So I wrote the dots. Sometimes you'd have to listen so many times through because you couldn't quite hear what the bass was doing. You didn't know it was a G with a B bass or whatever it was. So that was really good ear training. And then I prided myself on being the neatest copyist in town in terms of writing lyrics underneath it and putting a nice
a human clean finale.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted. I wanted people to look at the bit of sheet music that I wrote out of my hand and think, "Oh, wow, that was good," rather than scribble it.
Well, when did the reading come into your life then? Because obviously you were self-taught. So for the composing aspect and especially the arranging, really.
Yeah.
How did that? Was it from books? Was it like Henry Mancini book of arranging, or sort of?
Did you guess that?
Well,
did you guess that?
Yeah. No, I've always thought that, especially there's some stuff on YouTube of the guy on The Voice that you signed.
Yes, Bob Blakely.
Yeah, there's some big band arrangements in that, and it is so Henry Mancini in a good way, not sort of stolen.
It's going to get the Henry Mancini book.
Is it going to?
Oh wow! Good grief!
That is my very first arranging book, and sure enough, it's got all how to write for 5 saxes in a cluster of moving, and how to use brass mutes and all that sort of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And he doesn't write. He only writes about 3 pages on strings. Someone might look it up and find out that in fact it's 6 pages. I don't know, but he doesn't write an awful lot about strings, but he writes an awful lot about just how to write a score. And there were little vinyl records in it when I first got it. They've gone now. I've got the empty little pouches in the book. These days it's issued with CDs, which of course are now also slightly out of date. But yes, that was I thought you must have read somewhere that I started. No,
because I know everybody tends to say that they sort of, this book was the thing. And for me, I'm not saying this because you're here. It probably is like my learning book was A Songwriter's Tale. Because I remember when I got it was around the same time that I got the Randy Newman book. And I had a copy. And I just wore the thing out. And then I thought on an off chance, I don't know how old I was, probably about 11, that I just thought, I'll send Mike Batt an email and see if he can sign this book. And then you said, don't send it back. You sent me a signed copy of just sort of, it turned up like a couple of weeks later. And it's honestly, The Songwriter's Tale is probably one of my Bible books. If I went on to Desert Island Discs, which I think is very unlikely eventually.
You never know.
But you never, it probably would be the Desert Island songwriting book because it is the songs in it. I'm not doing this as a sort of I am doing this as a bit of a plug. But just as you go through them on the back, and you just think, right, Bright Eyes, brilliant. Soldier's Song, brilliant. Winter's Tale. System 605, theme from Caravans, I Feel Like Buddy Holly, Lady of the Dawn, Please Don't Fall in Love, I Watch You Sleeping, Railway Hotel, Closest Thing to Create. It's just constant of sort of perfect songwriting. And I mean that in a sort of, when you boil it down to sort of, you don't have to listen to the song, even just looking at it on paper, it does exactly what you think it's going to do. In the same way of the hymn book. I'm not saying that you know all your songs are just like hymns, but they're just written in such a way that you know where it's going to go. And occasionally it trips you up, or there's a bar of 2/4, or we call the clever bar.
Oh yeah,
where you know it's going along nicely, and then all of a sudden it sort of trips you up, and then you come back in. It's perfect. That just seeing it written down, it is just.
Well, it's fun. I'm very flattered, but interest. I think is it. I nearly said interest. I think it's funny when people say interestingly, and then they say what it is, and you think to yourself, well, we'll be the judge of whether it's interesting or not. But I never think, oh, I'm going to put a 2/4 bar in here. I just think about the idea, and then if it has to be expressed by leaving a note out, then you have to write a 2/4 bar or an extra 4 bar. You know, let's say the verse of Closest Thing to Crazy.
That goes everywhere, doesn't it?
3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 4. Well, that's only because I wanted an extra breath before she came in with the next song. It was actually me singing it on an album 10 years before Katie ever did it.
Yeah.
But I just wanted that bit more space, because if you just do it in 3/4, it'll be. And that's too quick. And so you just need that extra breath. So a 4/4 bar comes in. That's all it's for. Yeah. It's not to try and be tricky.
So how do you write? Are you led by the rhythm of the lyrics, or do you come up with the melody first and then add the lyrics in, or is it a bit of both?
Of course, that's the most commonly asked question on earth, but you asked it in a very uncommon sort of way. So I'm not insulting the question. I write all different ways, but the way I like least is if somebody gives me a tune and I've got to write the words to it, which I did do with Phantom of the Opera, for example.
Oh yeah.
Although a lot of my words got taken out, so I ended up 20% writer of that song. Not that was a very messy situation, so let's not even go there. But
didn't the same thing happen to Richard Stilgoe on Phantom of the Opera? Did he?
Well, he came in and replaced a lot of my lyrics.
Oh dear!
So he's still substantially involved. And then another person came in and wrote a lot more of them. So it was very messy. I mean, Andrew was very. I don't know. I think when I wrote the song with him, and he and I were the two only writers. I was the lyricist. He was the melodist. Mm-hmm. That was very simple. And I thought, well, we've both written a song. And when I realised he was about to think about possibly changing stuff, I thought to myself, well, hang on, if people, obviously in a theatrical situation, if you are like Wagner or someone like that, you can change your librettist and they work for you and you can do what you like. But I had come from a world where two songwriters get together and write a song and they're equal owners of it. Mm-hmm. So one would have to ask the other if they could change a word or bring another participant in. And I remember saying to him, I could just change some of your music.
Yeah, well, I don't like that chord, Andrew.
Yeah, but his sense of humour and mine didn't always collide in the right way. Put it that way. Sometimes they collided in the wrong way. So, but I was trying to make a point. I remember saying it to Cameron McIntosh one time, and I think he got quite upset with me. He didn't, because Cameron's so lovely, he would never get upset with you to your face. But it must have pissed him off afterwards, I think. Partly because they never asked me to write any more of the Phantom of the Opera. But I said, look, two people write a song, you can't just have one person deciding to change half of it. You have a chat about it, surely. And anyway, so that's how I ended up being the 20% writer of that song. But to get back to your answer, the answer to the question, what comes first? So that's the least comfortable. There are people who get a French song. My great friend Herbie Kretzmer, who sadly died year before last, who wrote all the lyrics to Les Miserables, and he didn't just translate them; he wrote them. They're wonderful.
I thought he translated.
No, he was a French speaker.
Right.
He spoke fluent French, but he wrote new lyrics.
I didn't know that.
Very often to mean the same dramatic thing, but they were absolutely his ideas. He wasn't just changing the word rouge for the word red.
Right, okay.
Definitely.
Because he translated all Charles Aznavour's French songs into English, didn't he?
He did, and that's how they got to know each other, and that's how he got to be known. In fact, I think Cameron, what happened was Herbie went to see Cameron to say, I've got this musical with all of Charles Aznavour's stuff. And Cameron wasn't really interested, but he took the meeting because he knew of Herbie being a very important writer, and also a theatre critic, I might add, which of course wouldn't have been far from Cameron's mind.
I think he was a film critic as well, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. But he and a lovely man. It stayed in Cameron's mind that Herbie was Aznavour's lyricist. Again, it wasn't all translated; it was a lot contributed originally. Because when suddenly the next knock on his door was Alain Boblio with Les Miserables, who better to think of to write the English lyrics, but the guy who'd been in his office the week before,
that was lucky,
Herbie Kretzmer.
Oh, good grief.
And of course that paid to Herbie Kretzmer's, gold leaf bill for the next 50 years, whatever.
I didn't know that. Yeah. So I always thought that was just a straight translation. Obviously not.
Yeah.
And the lovely lyrics.
I find it really hard to do. Say some people make a living out of it. Take a French or Italian tune and put lyrics to it. I can do it, but I find it a lot harder than. And I'm not that. I don't know what pleasure I would get out of writing a tune and then giving it to someone else to write the lyrics and not know what it was going to be about.
Yeah, you're right.
To me, the most important thing about a song is what it's about. Yeah. The message. And the second most important thing is what angle you take on it, how cleverly you twist the idea of I'm going to jump out the window and say it a different way.
It's rapidly becoming my favourite song.
I'm going to write that. Do you mind if we steal that?
Yeah. Like, what's another way of saying I'm going to jump out the window? I can't think of one at the moment. It might be, I have a suspicion I'm about to land in the garden.
Yeah, thud.
Yeah.
But there's a way of saying something in a different way. Funny enough, name dropping, I nearly said without name dropping, but it is with name dropping. I had lunch with Katie Melua only about 4 days ago. Mm-hmm. We were talking about about lyric writing. I hadn't seen her for a few years, actually. We were in a pub having lunch, and she's doing a thing at Oxford she's helping on a practical lyric writing course. And she's been studying it a lot academically because she's very much wanting to be a student she would call herself a student of lyric writing. She reads poetry. She studies and she's been on courses and stuff because she so much wants to become a better lyricist. Like we're all on a mission to improve ourselves. Anyway, we're talking about lyric writing. She said she'd been talking to Don Black, who's a mutual friend, and Don had said the most important thing is the angle. Right. The angle, your angle on it. How do you change it? I mean, you know, I was writing a song about somebody going crazy because they're in love with someone and maybe they shouldn't be. And it came up with the closest thing to crazy. And that was the angle that I took, which is a different way of saying, I shouldn't really be in love with you, should I? I am. Why are you driving me so crazy by doing all these things to me and treating me this way?
So when you're writing your lyrics, because this is our next step, isn't it? This is the mountain that's like in front of us. Sort of, we've got like 8 songs down and vague ideas what they're going to be about. So when you're writing your lyrics, are you putting yourself like Randy Newman, sort of as a character, or do you write it as sort of as what you'd feel, or a bit of both?
Well, when you say it, I wouldn't pretend to be a cowboy or a rider in the rain just for the sake of the song.
Oh,
unless it was for a film where there was a rider who was in the rain, or that was the imagery. In other words, I felt like I'm riding through the rain. You know, that would, but it'd be my thought. It'd have to be me thinking it about a particular thing. So you become an actor. Right. Particularly if you're writing something dramatic, whether it's the theatre or the film. But you don't, I never write just for the sake of having a hit. I'd never write, oh, you know, what was a hit? Oh, that bloke that wrote a thing about someone jumping out the window. I'll write one about jumping out the window as well. You know, I would never do that. It's got to be from the heart.
Okay, yeah.
I've got to actually want to jump out the window.
Yeah.
It's not that bad, is it?
You know.
I know you mentioned that you wanted to ask a very specific question about a section of the orchestra, which bewilders you slightly. Woodwind, yeah.
Yeah, you seem to treat oboes very, very nicely.
Well, I got a reputation for being a bit of an oboeaholic.
Well, they're always used beautifully. They really are.
Well, it's very nice of you, but there are only 4 woodwinds in an orchestra, apart from the bass clarinet, which is still a clarinet, and apart from the cor anglais, which is still an oboe. Mm-hmm. On Railway Hotel, I did use a cor anglais.
Yep.
Beautiful, beautiful baritone version of the oboe, as you know.
They're lovely, aren't they?
And yeah, I mean, when you're writing orchestrally, you do only have a choice of 4. Yeah. That's why you mix it and match it like a chemistry outfit, you know, with maybe put a couple of horns in with a flute to get that little different sound that everyone says, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
But after about 4 or 5 singles had oboes prominently in the intros, I thought, you know what? I think people are starting to notice, and so I stopped doing it.
Which is a shame, because I always thought,
yeah, it's done so well as well.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. I'm just wondering how you learned to write for individual sections of the orchestra. I mean, when I was doing it, I had a book called the Walter Piston. The Walter Piston Guide.
I've got that one as well.
You got the Piston Guide to Orchestration, and that tells you everything you need to know about the ranges and what instruments are available. But it doesn't seem to do anything else. It's just like a Haynes manual for instruments.
A lot of them, those books are. They're just like there's one called Jacob, a guy called Jacob. And I had that was my other one that I had as a companion to my Mancini was the jazzy one.
Yeah.
And the Jacob was the serious symphonic one. But it did tell you, it told you every blowing technique and all the things you need to know. So I suppose you just would go between the book. Rimsky-Korsakov, as you probably know, wrote a fantastic book on orchestration called Principles of Orchestration.
He was a fantastic orchestrator, wasn't he?
Wow. What a talent he was. Yeah. But when people asked him, I love your arrangements, or said that to him, he didn't say, or something like, I don't orchestrate music. I compose for orchestra.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Which might sound a bit poncy, but that's
what he's done. Yeah. I mean, yes, I think a lot of Mussorgsky's stuff would have been lost without Rimsky-Korsakov, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, because he did lovely jobs.
I've just had a look at the clock, and it is looking as if the clock has beaten us.
No, that's seriously.
Yeah, we're just about to get to the interesting questions probably after I rambled on all the things you didn't want to hear.
That's all right. We appreciate every second.
Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed it actually.
Yeah, I was having a wonderful time. How long have we been talking for?
Just
we've gone
over an hour.
Seriously, it didn't even feel like half an hour. Oh, what a shame.
No, it's only because I've got something else now.
Don't worry.
Sadly.
That's all right.
I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you very much.
So have I. It's been lovely. Thank you very much indeed for the hour.
Well, and also good luck with your album.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll jointedly do that. But thank you so much for doing this.
Try and maybe I can beg a copy, or tell me where I can buy it, and I'll go and see how much of Songs of Praise is in there.
They stole that from me, and that was from.
It'd be Abide With Us.
Yeah,
just alter the title slightly.
Yeah, it'd be fine.
Yeah, with an oboe intro.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Of course. Right, well, thank you so much, Mike, for doing this. We'll have to do a round 2, or maybe post-COVID we can do an in-person round 2 or something. We'll.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll sort something out.
Thank you
very nice
much
for you to think of having a chat, and I'm glad that we had time to do it.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
All of us. Okay, cheers then.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Just give it a couple of minutes, and then. We'll
kick off.
We'll kick off.
How are you?
Yeah, now if you want me to have headphones, I can. But if my audio's okay,
I think it should be okay. Should be okay.
Good.
It sounds absolutely fine to me.
Yeah.
How are you, Mike?
Great. Fine. By the way, I enjoyed your performance on the song.
Oh, thanks very much.
Yeah, it's good.
Thought I'd give it a go. I attempted, or butchered, as some people might say. Something out of there.
Oh, lovely. Very nice. There's a lot of nice stuff to choose from, isn't there?
Well, you know.
Yes. All nice. How long have we got, Mike? How long are you...
just whatever feels natural, really.
That sounds good to me, yeah.
How long do you like to do this? Half an hour, something like that? 45 minutes?
Yeah, 45 minutes-ish, an hour-ish, just...
Yeah,
as long
that's
as,
all good.
As long as it keeps going.
Yeah, I think we got that kind of time, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. Happy belated birthday, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Whoa.
I've sort of lost count these days.
It's just something that happens every year.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, it's another year, and you don't, it means nothing anymore.
No, that is a problem I find as well. So,
yeah,
what can you do?
Nothing.
It's marvelous. Right.
You've got a very snazzy looking studio there.
The idea, I think it would look better if it was sort of shot the other way, because there's all of the keyboards are sort of this side, which is like that side's the stuff that I don't touch as much. But
yeah, I've got my keyboards here, there. You see, and that's where I work. But the one I'm looking into now is, as you can see, if I'm playing my piano like that, I'm looking over to my right, which is an iMac, which I'm not using for anything else. So I use it, and the reason I use it is because it's got a camera, whereas my snazzy big widescreen doesn't have a camera and a mic.
Is that a P300?
What, the piano?
Yeah.
CP300, yeah.
Oh, you're in my territory now.
Tim used to have a P200.
I love the P200, and I had it for years, and it suffered all sorts of abuse. And then it just stopped working, and it was a rugged thing. It was a fantastic instrument.
Oh, I've had this. I played this in gigs. I played it with Hawkwind on stage, and then brought it back and plugged it in and carried on doing finale with it.
They feel wonderful, don't they?
Yeah.
It's just right. They feel good. They sound good. But unfortunately, mine stopped working. And it would have cost more to fix than it would to buy a second-hand one from someone.
Yes,
so I still haven't got around to it. But I love them.
Well, I'm sure you'll get another one when one turns up.
You'll find one.
I will.
Find one in a skip or in the canal, or dredge it out. It'll be fine.
They're all either in Aberdeen or Plymouth, and you think one will turn up and it'll be within adequate travelling time, I think. But I love them. How old is yours?
These ones, God, I don't know. I've got two of them actually. I've got one in storage and this one here. And when I was in a bigger place with a big studio as part of the house, these were just tools in the studio.
Yeah.
Now this is my main armament, and in fact, I found out this was the one I was using pretty much for all inputting of notes. And you felt that all you needed was you want balanced keys, so it feels like a piano, and it needs to be MIDI. But this is the one I ended up with, and have kept with.
Yeah, well, it's just I love the feel of mine, and I was bereft. Yeah. I was bereft when it stopped working. I was playing it. I looked sideways out of the window. I came back to it, and it didn't do anything.
Lit a candle.
Oh no, it was awful. I mean, it was like grief. It took me 2 or 3 weeks just to get used to the fact it had gone.
Was that when you came round all in black?
Yeah, and I had it in the corner of the room thinking, I'm going to get it fixed, and then I couldn't find anyone to fix it, and it would have cost £42 just to get it there. So it went.
Yeah, I had a Vox Continental like that. I bought it, and it didn't really work that well, and I never got it fixed, and eventually it got thrown out, I think.
Yeah, that was a problem with mine.
There's some things are so temperamental, aren't they? There's a synth there that an old Roland, and when somebody gave it me, I plugged it in, and I switched it on, and I thought nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden it just went poof, and a big cloud of smoke filled the room. Switch it off.
Maybe that's one of the effects.
Maybe.
Just explosion.
Explosion 1. Right, I think we're about...